No one ever looked twice at Prince Nathaniel Okoro. And that was exactly how the royal family wanted it. His brother, King Richard Okoro, ruled the kingdom of Iberia with strength and dignity. He was the golden son, the pride of the dynasty. But Nathaniel, he was the mistake, the spare prince who had never quite fit the mold of royalty. For years, he had lived in the shadow of the crown, ignored by the elders, overlooked by the press. His role was simple: stay out of trouble, stay out of sight, and most importantly, never outshine the king. But fate had other plans. Because the day King Richard disappeared, the kingdom had no choice but to remember its forgotten prince. It happened suddenly. One evening, King Richard was in his motorcade, traveling from the capital to a private estate. Hours passed, but he never arrived. The palace issued a statement: his car had veered off the road due to mechanical failure. A tragic accident, they claimed. The wreckage was found, but Richard's body was missing. A national crisis erupted. With no confirmed death and no ruler on the throne, the kingdom teetered on the edge of chaos. The royal council was frantic, the ministers scrambling for control. And in their desperation, they turned to the last person they had ever expected to call upon: Nathaniel. Nathaniel had spent years distancing himself from the monarchy. While his brother had ruled, he had pursued a quiet life, working as an art curator, teaching history, losing himself in books and paintings. He had never wanted power. But when the palace guards arrived at his doorstep, there was no room for refusal. The kingdom needs a ruler, they told him. Until we find the king, you must take his place. Nathaniel had laughed at first, thinking it was some cruel joke. Him. The forgotten prince. The one who had been dismissed at every turn. But then he saw the fear in their eyes. The kingdom was unraveling. The people were uncertain. And the more he listened, the more he realized the truth: if he didn't take the throne, someone else would, someone who might not have the kingdom's best interest at heart. So, with hesitation thick in his chest, Nathaniel walked through the palace gates, not as a guest, not as the overlooked younger brother, but as the acting king. The moment he took his seat on the throne, Nathaniel realized how deeply corruption had rotted the kingdom. The ministers who had once bowed to Richard now whispered in the halls, treating Nathaniel like a placeholder, a temporary inconvenience. The council sought to control him, feeding him carefully crafted speeches and decisions they expected him to sign without question. But Nathaniel was not as weak as they thought. Unlike Richard, who had been raised to rule, Nathaniel had spent his life watching from the sidelines. He had seen the game from a distance, understood the hidden plays and silent wars within the palace. And now, for the first time, he had power of his own. The ministers expected a puppet. They got a king instead. Nathaniel's first act as ruler was simple: reopen the investigation into Richard's disappearance. The council objected. The ministers warned him to focus on stability. But Nathaniel wasn't fooled. Someone in the palace knew what had really happened to his brother, and they had hoped he wouldn't ask questions. But he did. He pulled records, spoke to witnesses, examined the wreckage himself. And the deeper he dug, the more disturbing the truth became. Richard's accident had not been an accident. Someone had orchestrated it. And whoever it was never expected Nathaniel to be the one uncovering their secrets. They thought he would cover for them since he came to power because of their scheme. The kingdom had barely adjusted to Nathaniel's rule when the unthinkable happened. One stormy evening, as the royal guards patrolled the outskirts of the capital, a man stumbled onto the palace grounds, disheveled, weak, but unmistakable. King Richard had returned. The news spread like wildfire. The missing king was alive, but barely. He had been held captive, kept in a secret location by forces unknown. His escape had been desperate, his body weakened by months of confinement. Nathaniel rushed to his brother's side, shock and relief battling in his chest. "You're alive," he whispered, gripping Richard's hand. Richard, his voice hoarse, looked up at him and said just two words: "Trust no one." With Richard's return, the kingdom faced an unprecedented crisis. Nathaniel had stepped up when no one else could. He had begun fixing the fractures in the kingdom, earning the people's trust. And now, the true king had returned. The council demanded Nathaniel step down immediately, but the people had seen a different side of the monarchy. Many now saw Nathaniel as the leader they never knew they needed, a man who had ruled not out of entitlement, but out of necessity. For the first time, Richard and Nathaniel stood as equals. Two brothers. Two rulers. Richard, also seeing the work Nathaniel is doing, he did not want him to leave but accepted him as his assistant, and together, they vowed to rebuild a kingdom that had nearly destroyed them both, that nearly made them enemies. They knew Iberia no longer needed just a king. It needed a dynasty.
Every story holds a lesson. What did this one reveal to you? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed it, like, share, and subscribe for more timeless tales. Until next time, keep searching for meaning in every story.